has gone on, I've had friends reflect on my unusual career, both in front and behind the camera. But my journey, though interesting, has been somewhat elementary when compared to our guest. Elliot Mintz is a Hollywood legend. It's a real pleasure to welcome Elliot Mintz to Without Notes.
Bless you, Michael. It's my pleasure and honor to be with you.
Elliot, there's so many places we can go in our conversation, but as you know, I am endlessly fascinated by the human question of nature versus nurture. So a human being is formed, a unique human being such as yourself, maybe we're all unique in one way or another, and we ask, is this nature, nurture, or both? And so I'm not sure we ever really established the full answer to that question, but let's begin. Where were you born?
I was born in New York City on February 16th, 1945. I was technically born in the Bronx.
Right.
And the family moved for a brief period of time to Brooklyn, and then way up to Washington Heights in Manhattan.
Which I know, because I also was born in New York City.
Do you know Washington Heights?
I do. That's about 168th.
Very good.
Good.
Our apartment was on the corner of 190th Street and Fort Washington Avenue, 12 blocks above the George Washington Bridge. Two-bedroom apartment, post-war II building, and my mom and dad, my sister and I lived in the two-bedroom apartment. My father would live to the end of his life in the same apartment.
Oh, he never moved?
He never. My mother passed, and my father remained in the apartment. He felt her essence, and they both had spent more than 50 years in that two-bedroom apartment.
Wow. And that was a rental, not owned?
It was, I believe, $190 a month.
It's a vast sum at that time.
Oh, I got a call from my dad when he was 88 or 89, and he was disturbed because the landlord had just informed him that there was going to be a $30 increase in the rent.
The nerve.
He didn't understand this. Simultaneously, he didn't understand why the automobile insurance company, because he was driving up till age 92, wanted to hike his rates up. And he said, I've never had an accident. I've never done anything wrong. I've never collected $1 from them. Could you call them?
Now, Elliot, when you go where do you go to high school?
George Washington High School.
That would be
around 174th, 5th Street. I went to high school for 6 years because I was left back in every grade. I had to go to summer school every summer. I finally was released with a 66 average, around a C, applied to every college that one would apply to, was rejected by all of them. My IQ is 12 points below the national average. My academic career, it was so bad in high school that they moved me from the conventional classes to more practical things for me, where I learned how to do retail, I learned how to do woodwork, I learned how to do manual labor, and it was very good for me because I got to meet people who worked with their hands and didn't pretend to be dictated by their minds. So after having been left back and tutors and the rest of it, one college accepted my application, Los Angeles City College, the community college in this city, and on Vermont in Melrose, and I went there to study broadcasting, which I did.
Let me back up here. Now, if I had met you in high school, sophomore, junior in high school, and I had seen your life, would you have described that to me as a middle class, lower middle class, or upper middle class?
Without question, a lower middle class background. My father was in, if you forgive or allow the Yiddish, in the schmata business.
Yes.
Helping to create women's coats and suits in the post-World War II America. He worked every day of his life on 34th Street below Times Square in the heat of summer when there was no air conditioning, and in the coldness of the New York winters as a cutter, cutting the patterns so women could wear these suits. I don't think my dad ever made more than a couple of $100 or $300 a week all of his life, until the end of his life, when he and his brother and a couple of the guys got together and pooled their money and bought a little apartment building.
Okay, so you're raised in
But
a
lower middle class.
environment. Now you're underachieving in school.
Yes.
Which of course is most interesting to me for lots of reasons, not least of which I know you to be a brilliant man. Why do you think now, with the advantage of hindsight, there was a disconnect academically, at least in high school?
Well, you're making a presumption that I will not acknowledge.
Yeah.
I have met brilliant men and women, and I am not one of them. And it could be easily proven in a New York second. So rather than me defend the fact that I am not an intellectual, that I am not brilliant, etc.
But getting back to why you underachieved in high school, tell me from your point of view, what was the disconnect?
Well, those who subscribe to the theory of the disconnect will say I was either lazy, uninterested, bored, distracted. I mean, I've heard all of those interpretations.
Did you ever feel...
But I don't acknowledge any of it.
Did you feel in any... because I struggled with dyslexia. Did you feel any of that dyslexia, which of course wasn't really spoken about? You know, David Geffen told me at a dinner party about a year and a half ago, he said, you know, Michael, we had another word for dyslexia about 40 years ago. And I said, really, David, what was that? And he said, dumb. So, do you feel that there was any element of dyslexia?
No. I didn't
feel did you work less hard than you might have? Or
No.
I'm
not that smart. I'm trying to convince you of this. I can't do the multiplication table times 5 any higher than that.
Okay.
I mean...
so then you get accepted to college, and you come out here to Los Angeles City College on Vermont.
Yes.
But by the way, I will acknowledge that is not a...
it's not Harvard.
Not an Ivy League school. Is that fair?
I think that would be a fair assumption.
Is that fair? So, off we go. You come to Los Angeles. Have you ever been to Los Angeles before?
I don't think I had ever been in an airplane before. I was 17.
So you came to Los Angeles City College at age 17. What year is this?
1963. So
now, then, you're in Los Angeles City College.
Yeah.
In 1963.
Yes.
You've never been to Los Angeles. And then something happens long around the winter. What happened?
And I think I know what you're alluding to.
You know exactly.
I know exactly what you're alluding to. I always leave a little cushion of doubt so I don't sound pompous or presumptuous. For some it was the day the music died. For some it was the end of America's innocence. For some who believed in the concept of Camelot and a vibrant young president and first lady who looked like they belonged more at the Cannes Film Festival than exiting the White House.
Yes.
When America was at her prime, when there was nothing we couldn't do, President Kennedy was assassinated. That was a moment that was burned in our hearts, minds, consciousness, and souls. I was at the broadcasting bungalow. A little tiny little bungalow. There were 30 or 40 students who studied broadcasting.
At the LA City College?
At LA City College.
Literally at LA City College.
It was in the afternoon. And we were taking our classes. There were only 2 instructors, and we were learning how to be disc jockeys and newscasters and cameramen.
And you were pursuing a career in
broadcasting. I wanted to talk on the radio.
There you go.
The bulletin came through. Classes were dismissed. And over the loudspeakers, the announcement was made, and that was the end of school for all the students. However, if you were a broadcasting student, at that moment in time, this would be the most important news story you would ever be exposed to.
Of course.
We didn't leave school. We gathered around a television monitor, and our instructor asked us to pay really close attention about how the event would be covered, to try and view it dispassionately, to take our sadness, our lamentation about the loss of the leader, put that on hold, and watch how television would cover America's first televised assassination.
What an extraordinary opportunity for a broadcast journalist, a young broadcast journalist.
We watched as Walter Cronkite removed his glasses.
Yes, I remember.
Looked up at the clock.
I remember this.
Looked back in the camera, made the announcement, and did this. Put the glasses on and went back to Parkland Hospital. Says, within a matter of moments, a photo appears on the television screen of, quote, a possible suspect in the shooting of a police officer,
Yes.
J.D. Tippit.
Right.
And the suggestion is made that the man who shot the police officer ran into a movie theater.
Correct.
The ticket taker found that to be unusual and called the police. And a picture appeared of the man who shot the police officer less than an hour after the president was assassinated.
This is all correct.
And I heard a voice behind me looking at the picture saying, hot damn, that's Lee. And I turned around and I said, Lee? Lee Harvey Oswald. That's who that is. And I said, do you know him? He said, I served in the Marine Corps with him.
Wow.
Of course I know him. We had lots of conversations. This was within an hour after the president was assassinated. This was before Oswald was charged with anything. Just a random
Before
picture.
he was arrested.
Before he was arrested. Which of course begs the question how that photograph would naturally appear on national television of a suspect before he was arrested. But that's for the assassination program. I asked Roland Bynum, my fellow student, if we could walk into another room for just a few minutes so I could take an interview with him. He agreed. We sat and we talked for 15 minutes about his association with the suspect involved in the assassination of the police officer. I took the interview, I made it available to KFWB News, which at the time was all news radio.
All news, local, all news station.
Hi, my name is Elliot, and I'm a student at Los Angeles City College, and I just talked to a guy who knows Lee Harvey Oswald. If you want to tape, to play on the radio, and a motorcycle arrived at my $200 a month apartment near Western Avenue and Hollywood Boulevard, picked up the tape, played it. It was the first broadcast of anybody who shed any insight into the suspect. That would be followed by 150 phone calls from other media outlets, and before the night was over, Michael, I heard my interview with Lee Harvey Oswald on the network. It was my introduction to broadcasting.